Think of all the various episodes we've done of this, and you and I are both therapists. This is the first time we've ever recommended therapy.
I know, dude. I know. It's so that says something about the significance of what we're talking about in what happens to one to one's sense of self in this divorce process.
We now bring you Enter the Freud.
This is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice.
In 2023, it used to be that relationships, it was until death do us part, and now in 2023, there's not that many relationships that are until death do us part. That's the exception, not the norm these days.
I know.
And so it's. Go ahead.
Do you know what? I don't know what the stats are, and then I don't know the stats of who initiates the divorce. I know it's more women initiate than men, but at one point I heard it was like 9 out of 10 divorces were initiated by women.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that's correct. I think
that sounds too high.
It may be skewed towards women. But sorry to jump right into something like that, but why do you think that is? Why? What do you think the possible hypothesis? Like the first thing that hits your mind, like why would that?
The first thing that hit my mind was that men, there's some more primitive or maybe juvenile part of men that where their wives are like their mommy, and they want just to have them at home to make them lunch. And that part they don't ever want to change. They want to go out to strip clubs, and they want to go fuck prostitutes, and they want to flirt with people, whatever. They want to get to do all that, but they still want their mommy at home to make them lunch. I feel like that's men's thing. So it's and I think it's sort of evident in the fairly common thing where, especially like rich, powerful men have like this wife at home that's like a domestic thing, but then they have all their side chicks or their mistresses or whatever. So I think it's kind of like a commonly programmed thing for men, whereas I think women's desire or whatever is very different.
Well, so, okay, if we were to just stick with men and say like, all right, that's a really, I like your idea of this like needing somebody to keep the home, right? But so obviously if you get a divorce, your relationship has gone to shit a while ago. And when I say go to shit, I mean like you start to have all kinds of intimacy issues. You're resenting the other person for all kinds of contracts that you made previously that now don't fit your life. There's all kinds of things that evolve over time in a long-term relationship that make it very, very uncomfortable to be in, right?
Yep.
But then you're proposing that a dude would more likely keep the status quo of totally dysfunctional and uncomfortable for the sake of this potential home base.
Yeah, because for some reason, it's almost like it's maybe more these two different needs in our, if I use a metaphor, and I've heard that there's some truth to what I'm about to say, that in our brain, neurologically, there's like different centers, and that for men, maybe these centers are more distinct. The center for like home, connection, attachment, that type of love, versus the erotic, romantic, excitement type of love. Maybe in our brains, they're more distant in men than in women. Maybe in women, they're closer together.
Fucking hypothesis number 2. I like it. That one's actually really good as well. I don't know how we're ever gonna put that to test, but it's like it's awesome. It kind of throws us right into something. Reminded me instantly. So, did you have something you were gonna?
Yeah, dude, I know how we can put it to test.
Okay.
You and I aren't gonna do this, but the boring people that spend their time in labs, and thank God for those people, here's what they're gonna do. They're gonna get 100 men and 100 women, and they're gonna take the man, and they're gonna tell him, and they're gonna have a brain scans, PET, EEG, whatever, figuring it all out, what's going on in his brain, and they're gonna be like, okay, think about how you feel when you come home and your wife has dinner cooked for you. Or they're going to show them a picture of like home and like cuddling around the living room with the dog and the wife and the kids or whatever. They're going to evoke that thing and they're going to see what lights up in his brain. And then they're going to be like, okay, change the topic. And now they show him a picture of a super hot young chick. And they're going to see what lights up in his brain that way. And then they do the same thing to women and you just see if it's the same or if it's different.
Oh, man. I totally like that. Yeah, I mean, okay. Once you pointed this out, because I know, like, we spent a lot of time in grad school figuring out test design, test development. That was like fundamentally half of our training, right?
Totally.
So I know that actually most of these tests are created by psychologists, right?
Yeah, totally.
But so, okay, this is a good design. I can tell instantly, right? Like, okay, if there's any kind of a statistical difference, then we would know, okay, maybe they are not further apart, as you said, but maybe the connection is different.
Right.
Right. Whether it is that anatomical versus is that a cultural phenomenon? I don't know.
Yep.
Right.
Let's throw another sort of obvious hypothesis into here, which would just be the evolutionary idea that evolutionarily it's advantageous for the man to kind of like have his wives who have his young kids happy at home raising the kids while he's out there trying to like plant some other seeds other places. And you can see that the dude that was getting good at that, he passed his genes on more, right? Okay, so that seems somewhat obvious. Now let's think aloud here into the woman, whereas the woman is, if her guy's not around and they're not like doing a nice thing together as a family, she shouldn't like that. She should try to like keep him around, to like keep him around taking care of the kids. And if he's not, fuck you, you're fucking out of here. I got to go find a new guy. So I don't know.
Thus the origins of domestic dispute and the need for infinite amount of couples counseling that mostly ends in divorce. That I know is also true. Most people who go to couples counseling end in divorce. I was listening to somebody talk about, I even forget the name of it, but it was like discernment therapy. I think what it was called, right? So really contentious couples, which like are pretty much everyone who goes to couples therapy, go to this structured kind of a first session where they figure out, do you want a divorce? Do you want a status quo, just stay with what's going on? Or then do you want to go into couples therapy? Are both of you in on it? Which is the dilemma. If you do couples therapy, you'll find very quickly that one person is invested significantly more than the other. Very rarely do I have people sit there together holding hands, looking at each other in between the very tough moments and say like, hey, I love you, babe. Like, that's happened to me fucking one time. One couple.
Totally. And let me add on to this observation. And actually, I was thinking of my own marriage. So me and my ex-wife, we were in couples therapy. This is a long time ago, 10 years ago. And in that time, I was more like positively invested in like, hey, the relationship's not going so great. What can we do to make it better? That was me. Where she's more kind of like, oh God, like why do we have to be here? That was kind of our dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I'm more in this term that's often gets used in relationship studies, the pursuer and the distancer. So I'm the pursuer trying to like connect and get close. She's the distancer, like, whatever. And that was our dynamic for many years. And then this thing happened where eventually, I don't know what happened, I gave up on it and I started to think, well, wait a minute, there's some other women I could flirt with, whatever. And so then it shifted and I went into distancer, right?
Yeah.
As soon as I went into distancer, boom, she became the pursuer.
Wow.
It's just like, there's this like instantaneous, powerful, psychochemical reaction thing that happens where when you're in a relationship, there's a pursuer and the distancer, and then the pursuer turns into a distancer, and suddenly now the other person is going to pursue.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, unless it's like the person distance and then the other one is just like, oh, fucking thank God. right?
Yeah, and then the relationship's over.
But then that's like an easy over. I remember I was talking to this friend and his wife cheated, and so he's like, oh my God, like he calls me and he's like, hey man, am I ever gonna feel any different? And I was like, oh dude, I don't know, how you feeling, buddy? And he goes, fucking tremendous relief. Like, dude, I feel free. Like, it's unbelievable. That's what he says, right? And it's that's clearly one of those cases where it's like she's out the door, dude. She's already with somebody else, and then she breaks it to him, and he's just like, oh, fucking thank God. Like,
Yeah.
like, wow, let's get out of here. And like in that case, we would have kind of like a divorce model that would be so much less contentious. Like, where do you think this whole like need for revenge and deep-seated psychiatric disturbance comes from this divorce experience? Like, what are...
Dude, it's so common, man. It's so powerful.
I know it's super bizarre, and the theories that I've heard is like, oh, here's the psychology of divorce, right? The one who initiates the divorce then feels guilty for having had to break this contract, right? Mm-hmm. Predominant emotion is going to be guilt. The one who is surprised with the initiation of divorce then feels resentment and hostility towards the other, right? Oversimplified beyond belief. But in a way, it's kind of like, well, I don't even give a shit who initiates. It's just like that you decide due to someone's willingness to actually verbalize, it's over, we're getting a divorce, right? And then what happens? Where do all of our minds go? Where then it's just like, okay, start attacking their character. Point out that the flaw is in them. Very few people are just like, oh, we're getting a divorce. Well, shit, man. I totally could have been a better, like, I shouldn't have watched football 6 hours on every freaking day. Like, I should have, oh my God, I totally should have, like taken you out so much more. I know that you want this. I shouldn't have been such a shit to your friends. Oh my God. Like, nobody does that.
Yep. I think it's two thoughts are coming to mind. One is, this is a weird way to get to this thought. A long time ago, you and I were talking about cults, and you really you impressed this point about cults that I think is important, is that one of the like centerpieces of the cult creation power is to have like an enemy. It's like, we're not that. And it's kind of like anyone who's not in the cult is bad. If you're not in the cult, you're bad. Yeah. So I think there's this powerful force in human psychology, and I think it goes back to an evolutionary thing where like there's in-groups versus out-groups, and there's my tribe and we're good, and there's the enemy tribe and they're fucking bad. Yeah. And I think that, my guess is that was helpful in primitive psychology evolving, and even pre-humans like apes and whatever the hell we were before apes, that was helpful because like you stick with your tribe, and the enemy tribe is bad, and you kill those fuckers if they come too close, you know?
Right.
And I think that remnant is still in us fairly strong, and when we have our in-groups in our life, but the most intense in-group thing is our romantic partner. Yeah. But this even happens with non-romantic partners. Like, you'll have some friends, like sometimes you'll see it like work partners. Two dudes will get together and partner on a job. Oh, yeah. And then something goes wrong, and then it goes bad, you know? Yeah. And they do this same kind of divorce, black and white thinking enemy thing. They do partners in jobs when the partnership goes bad. They could be best friends for years and years and years, and then they have some little difference in vision about how the business should run, and they can't resolve it, and then boom, the relationship is over and they fucking hate each other, you know? Yeah, yeah. So I think it's that same thing. It's this like black and white thinking, us versus them. I think it's a primitive survival thing that comes out when you've been close to someone and then there's a difference and now that person's just got to be the worst fucking person in the world.
Wow. Well, now that you pointed out in that way that it isn't just like between the contract of those, the husband and wife. I'm going to choose this like heteronormative shit because like fucking the majority of people. Well, you know what, dude? Okay, I'll just be inclusive, right? Like whether it's husband and wife or whatever kind of romantic
husband and zuzband.
Husband is husband. Yeah, dude. Whatever it is, as you look at like, okay, there's that contract, and there's we in my mind, I had already kind of like created a split where it was like, oh no, in the romantic contract, it's different, and when it breaks, then you must attack and destroy the other, and typically because men do it more openly aggressively, women are way more passive aggressive in their approach. They tend to use character assassination as their method, and so like we see this. It's almost like a stereotypical fucking battle that breaks out in the separation, right? Which is very different between two dudes where they're both going to just be openly aggressive and just like, fuck you. No, fuck you. Oh, you fucked it up. You said this wrong. Bloop. Right? It's not in writing. Yeah. You didn't write it down correctly. And so the deal is wrong. And then both of them are like, fuck you. And then that's how it rolls. But with men and women in that separation process, their styles are so different that it tends to go on for like unnecessary points, which then, and I didn't want to get into this, so I don't want to. I don't really want to talk about it. I'm just going to mention very briefly, family law attorneys just prey on this discrepancy of models between men and women.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's so easy to get them fired up by just like oh, just tweak and point out that he's doing this particular thing that we know that all bad men do, and then the woman gets into a super ignited position, and then must exert and finally, perhaps maybe for the first time, take a stand and stand up for herself, right?
Yep, totally. Okay, so then the other thing that we should weave into here is jealousy. Jealousy is such a fucking powerful thing. So even when there's not divorce or whatever, just imagine. Trying to think of something. Just imagine you're newly dating some chick, but you like her and it's cool, right? And then like she's like in the bathroom and her phone lights up and you see she got a text from some other guy, and it fucking hits a thing, and let's say you've only been dating like a couple weeks, but you really like her and you see she texted some other guy and he has like some heart emoji, whatever on there.
He wants her too.
It's a powerful thing in you, and it's like that's a powerful fucking thing. That has nothing to do with divorce, marriage, partnership, whatever. And it probably doesn't have anything to do with this tribal thing I was talking about. That's a different psychological, biological thing. That's a powerful thing in both men and women. I think men and women both have it very powerfully. It seems to express itself a little bit differently in each of them. Yeah. But I often think of that. I often think of it just in this evolutionary term they call mate guarding, where it's like you're trying to guard your mate and have your mate, produce your children, and you don't want other, and it can, the man-woman thing, it can go both ways.
Definitely.
And so therefore, those people who had an intense mate guarding response, they passed their genes on better than the people that didn't care if their lady was talking to other guys,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think. Okay, but back to the divorce. I think that mate guarding thing is in it.
Nice.
It's mixed in. There's a few things. Let me tell you this story that isn't necessarily going to confirm my theory, but somehow it's relevant. Okay, so I was married for a long time, and then the marriage just was like stale for a long time, and my wife at the time she just was like losing interest in me. So let's start dating other people. So we started trying to do that. Let's date other people, which, that's always a fucking clusterfuck. It's never like as nice and easy as anyone wants to make it sound. But so we were doing that for a while. And then eventually I started dating this woman who eventually became my kind of long-term girlfriend. But then when my wife found out that I wasn't just freely dating, but that I actually liked this woman, had a girlfriend, something hit hard in her. And she was like, fuck this shit. That's not okay. Fuck you. Like, she kind of went evil and angry on me when she found out about that.
Yeah.
So that hit a nerve for her, the difference between me just fooling around meaninglessly versus me having an emotional connection with a girlfriend hit a thing. And then she's like, fuck this, we're getting divorced. It's done. And so she like kicked my ass out of the house. Okay.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
that's chapter 1 of the story. Chapter 2 of the story is then I had that woman who was my girlfriend then for a few years, and my wife fucking hated my girlfriend's guts. Even though my girlfriend was cool and innocent and didn't do anything wrong, but my wife hated my fucking girlfriend's guts. And at one point she sent me this email. She's like, hey, we should try to like patch this up and resolve this and blah, blah, blah. And so we kind of exchanged some nice things. And I was like, okay, yeah, the other elephant in the room is like, if we run into each other, my girlfriend's there, I can feel there's this tension. Is there a way we could resolve that? And she sort of thought about it. She's like, no, there's no way we can resolve that. And then she's like, when you get your next girlfriend, I won't hate her so much. But this girlfriend, yeah, I'm just going to always hate her.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know what that is, because you mentioned this as kind of the umbrella of jealousy. Then within that, there's mate guarding. And then it's like, that story is awesome because it definitely illuminates something here that like makes, and it points a lot to what happens when you separate, because hopefully when you separate, you each find love, and because you initially do really love each other enough to maybe even have children together, and then something happens and now you're not going to be together, and you mostly want the best for the other person, right? Like it's hard to then be like, oh, I hate you, I hope you fucking die, and you never really, even though shit, some people actually feel like that, but I think often people actually want that person to succeed and then become like, have a great life without me, so I don't worry about you, so I don't feel like, oh fuck, like I'm doing okay but you're not, right? Like that. I don't even know what to call this. Like in this split, and it's like, there must be multiple versions of what happens, right? Like as I mentioned, one is like you split up and you guys either go through a phase where you can't even see each other. You can't look at each other without like erupting into furious, uncontrollable rage. That's like not okay for the kids to see, and so then you have to drop them off at the parents' house and shit like that, right? Like that would be probably far on the contentious side. And then somewhere in the middle, there's like, oh, we basically can't stand each other, but we can talk and make like reasonable decisions. And then there's like far on this third option where it's like, okay, we've separated. We both agreed this was definitely the best decision for everyone involved. And so we're kind of even have a sense of our friendship that got us involved in the first place.
Right.
Right? And so then you work together well as friends and as co-parents and then blah, blah, blah. Do you think that's fair? Like, I'll just put it in 3 buckets. There's probably many more. But like, what do you think? The one that I'm interested in, for some reason, I'm going towards the dark today, right? Like, I'm being sucked into like, what causes this fucking like deep, uncontrollable, contentious part? Even though I know I should be more interested in the third one, where it's like, hey, what makes everyone so successful and happy in this thing, right?
But investigating the dark could help us figure out how to get to the light. So let's investigate the dark. What we've talked about, the like us versus them tribal thing, that's in there. We've talked about the mate guarding jealousy thing. Then the story I told, I don't know if it's just a mix of those. It feels like it illuminates something else, though. It's like if my partner leaves me, that's painful. But then if my partner finds another partner, like I want to fucking kill them. It just brings up the most hate-filled, envious, fucking awful part of me.
It's some kind of betrayal that it must be on such a fundamental level, right? That kind of like it's not an experience of like, oh, they found someone else. Oh, thank God, because he doesn't do well alone. Like, you know, like, oh man, that like now I don't have to worry about him trying to come back and try to have sex with me when he's drunk or whatever. Like that's not what like happens in this case. There's some kind of like fundamental, this is what like I wonder about the psychology of betrayal.
Yeah.
Right? The psychology of betrayal. What is that? Like, because it could be formal in the case of a marriage where you guys say, and then I will stay with you good or bad till death, or till, what the fuck do they say?
Until death do us part.
Until death do us part. But it's through the good and the bad, right? And then
for better and for worse.
Oh, for better and for worse. Yeah, and so there we are. It's definitely for worse. And then and then for some reason, one decides to separate more than the other. One decides to separate more than the other. Then this person gets totally outraged, betrayed, then begins to behave really badly. That ignites this other person, then that ignites him or her. Now they are betrayed by this like erratic, I condemn you, you're shit, character assassination, like you're a fucking terrible dad, you were never there for me, you, or, and it could go either way, it's a man or a woman, doesn't matter, or they, and then then this second person is betrayed as well. How is that possible? Yep. How can both people be betrayed? I think it goes back to your business buddies, right? Your business buddies, like, in the end, both of them are betrayed, right? They're betrayed by, in the case of business, it's so fucking easy to see. You didn't write a clear contract. That's it. It's fucking simple. If you had made a clear contract, we would not be in this position, right? And or the world changed so much that it was impossible to write a contract that would reveal the struggle that we were going to hit, right? I think those two, either we were naive and didn't make a good contract, or the world literally transformed. And
but I think it's usually that they're naive and don't write a good enough contract, because when you're buddies or when you're falling in love, the person's in your in-group and you don't imagine that they're going to do anything wrong because you guys are buddies. You're part of the same crew.
Yeah.
So you don't envision all the possibilities where you can diverge, and then one comes up and you diverge, and it's like, what? That's not how we were supposed to do it. What? Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. Bow.
Well, I've literally seen couples where I'll ask them like, okay, you guys have been married for a couple years, right? So when you got married, what was the plan? What was the plan, right? And they were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, what was the idea of like, in a year, we're going to do what together? In 5 years, what are we going to be doing together? There was no fucking plan. And I don't think... No,
because the plan is we're going to live happily ever after. That's the fucking plan, always.
But that's not a plan. That's just...
And that's why they all fucking train wreck.
That's a stupid thing to just say and just be like, yeah, and then one day I'll retire and be happy and then rich and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, really? Okay, what is the plan? How would you exactly get from where we are today? Because it's like, okay, you guys just met, you're married, you're in love, congratulations, yeah, fuck yeah, it's awesome. And then, so, what do you do a month from now? What the fuck are you guys going to be doing a month from now? Like, what does real life look like? Like, how do you support each other's aspirations? Do you even know what they are? No, they don't. They have no idea. They have no idea what the other one actually wants to be. They're too busy just like, oh, you're going to be who I need you to be, right? And I'm sorry that my attitude today is a little sour, but it's just pointing out, and it's tilting towards like this egocentric human being, like the basic American narcissist, right? Where it's like, or there's almost like a trend towards a denial of empathy. Not that there isn't empathy, but there's like a denial of it for the sake of our own endless need to be great and succeed, right?
Yep.
Have you seen that show on Netflix? It was it's a Korean show. And it has something like there's 100 of these athletes who then all compete against each other. They're like all different types of athletes. I can't believe I've only seen one episode with my son, but it's really strange because so they do a thing that splits who was more physically strong, top 50 out of 100, and then there's the lower 50, right? And so the top 50 get to choose who do they want to choose for the next battle. They have to they have to do some like physical battle against this person. Well, a lot of the top 50 chose people from the top 50. Like these dudes, these like super athlete guys would pick a much bigger, scarier guy.
Jesus.
What the fuck? That's like...
I wouldn't do that.
No, but no, these guys are the top of their fucking game, and so they want a challenge. They don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't want to just fucking go and like, because they could just pick a model girl and just throw her, right? But right, and we instantly see how shameful that is as a human being. But then you get in a fucking divorce, and it's just like people just start exercising all of their intellectual advantages to try to like literally pick the model and throw her. It's so shameful, dude. Like, I don't know why I don't know why I'm having that fucking reaction to this. Like, it pulls out of you this kind of like, I'm gonna punch down and like.
You mean when you're in a breakup or a divorce, this thing comes out in you where you just want to like beat down.
But you pick the weakest part of them to attack.
Yeah.
You don't go after like their incredible success where they're better at this than you, and you're just like, all right, let's fucking fight on that term, right? And if I best you in this, then we're probably getting back together. Whatever. Like.
Yeah. Okay. So I believe that this instinct you're describing, I think it's universal. I think when someone betrays us, and then especially in love, when we break up and we feel betrayed or we feel like they've left us and discarded us and they want to go find someone better, it brings out, I believe it's a natural, normal, primitive urge to do this thing you're saying, like, fuck them, I'll hurt them, I'll talk shit about them, I'll try to make them look bad, I'll try to like beat them down.
Yeah.
I just think it's a natural human primitive urge. And then I think some people are mature enough to bite their lip and contain that urge and instead do a more mature thing. But I sort of feel like everyone has that urge.
Yeah.
And then there's just different levels of maturity and how much you can like bite down and like not get sucked down into the urge.
Wow. I was just thinking like, yeah, okay. So the urge comes up and you feel vulnerable, betrayed, weak, discarded, right? Unloved, unlovable. Maybe even in the worst shape of your life in some cases, right? And
for a lot of people, divorce is the fucking pit, the bottom, the worst case shape of your life. I think that's quite common.
Right. And if that is you, how are you then supposed to, oh, really? You're gonna rise above and you're gonna choose to be the one who picks the high road?
Which is why many people do not do that.
It's really hard to behave well when you are psychologically in the most vulnerable, weak spot. It's the exact opposite of this Korean show where the guys are at the top of their fucking game. They picked the guys from each athletic sport who are at the top. And so they then have a different psychology versus like oh, I'm now broken, discarded, and then I'm going to somehow find it within me to then be like, I want the best for you. Like, what an impossibility. I just want to point this out, right? Like it in this moment sounds impossible, even though in my own divorced life, I find times where I can totally have that position where I want the best for her. I'm like really proud of everything she does, and but it's not when I feel the most dejected. It's when I have a really full cup.
Yeah, totally. When you feel dejected, it's hard to find the strength to do this take the higher road thing. I find a thing that helps me do that is if I kind of talk metaphorically about like two parts of your brain or two parts of your psychology, there's the emotionally attached, like your wife or your ex-wife is this super important person and your well-being in your life is really dependent on her, and your emotional needs were really dependent on her, and your financial and everything. So you're really locked into that emotional part. So it's a super intense thing. And then if she's not doing what you want and there becomes this big tension, negativity between you in this powerful emotional brain, that's when you can really fucking go postal. But then there's this other part of your brain, which is like how you interact with like professional colleagues, or how you interact with like your accountant or the grocery store clerk. And it's this very dispassionate, professional, civil part of your brain. And what I try to do, and easier said than done, but what I try to do is it's just like, I just try to like take this emotional fucking postal brain and like it's there and it's fine and its feelings are legitimate and whatever. But I'm just when I'm actually gonna act out or interact, I'm gonna like try to go up into here and use this like super dispassionate professional side of myself. And all those feelings and whatever, they're there, but I'm just gonna temporarily set them over here and we'll maybe deal with that later. And for now, I'm gonna go super like civil.
How exactly did you just get to that place? I couldn't follow. Like I get how you could do this as a psychologist because you've spent your entire life perfecting this. But how is the average accountant supposed to do that? How's the average like roofer or
right? I think it's a good question. I don't know the answer, but I'll attempt to give a hypothesis. I think that evolution, and maybe biological evolution, or maybe just like consciousness evolution, part of what's going on in humans is and maybe humans do this and no other animals or organisms do this, is we're trying to develop, there's the animal primitive reactive brain, and then there's the like reflective observing brain. And some people have more of this, and some people have less of this. And dogs have very little, though they have a little bit. If you like teach a dog to sit before it eats, it kind of has a little bit, you know. But I think a big important part in raising children and in cultural evolution and in human species evolution is trying to build this more and more and more. You were just saying that if a person could figure out the recipe to build this observing ego, to grow it, to like that would be, and I think you're right. I think that's sort of like this huge.
Why'd you call it an observing ego? Like, why did you use?
That in psychoanalysis, the term they use to describe, well, it's a little bit different, but psychoanalysis uses this term observing ego to describe this part of yourself that you can go up into it and you can look at what you're doing and be like, whoa, David, you're really fucking angry. You feel like killing the person. I can see why you'd feel that way. That's the psychoanalysts call that observing ego.
Versus like a metacognitive process.
Observing ego is a metacognitive process. It's just a different term.
Right. I'm trying to like clue in like where are we? Like what is it that we're saying could be potentially cultivated? And
a metacognitive process. What was I calling it? I was calling it just a more mature professional self.
Yeah. Right. This observing ego And then it's like how would one, if you decided, okay, well, I guess I'm getting a divorce, I should probably like get that in shape, right? So that I can function and compartmentalize better, right? I can compartmentalize my incredibly betrayed feelings and my need to then move on and become whatever, all of the host of complexities that emerge. And if you were to say like, okay, I'm going to do it. It's almost like if you decided, like I have, where I'm like, all right, I'm going on a surf trip to Nicaragua. Well, I'm training like a fucking month. I'm crazy, dude. I'm in the pool 3 times a week. I like my lifting is now like 25% more. Plus,
wow.
Yeah, it's like,
that's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you do surf training for
like,
observing ego?
Exactly.
Here's the I don't really like this answer, but here's what the psychoanalytic world would say is the child develops observing ego because the parents do all of this stuff for many, many years as the kid's growing. And basically the parents provide their observing ego. And they're like, oh, you're sad. It's okay. And so the parents are kind of providing this, like, you have super, super intense feelings. That's okay. I still love you. And I can like name your feelings and I can kind of provide observing ego. And then slowly but surely over the years, the kids develop it.
Too late for that. We're talking about like a 35 to 57-year-old person. Right.
And then the psychoanalyst, and again, I don't really like this answer, but maybe it's true. I don't know. The psychoanalyst would say, do long-term in-depth therapy, and then the therapist becomes your parent replacement and provides that function for you.
Well, this does come to a place of like, if you're getting a divorce, you should fucking go to therapy instantly. Even though like maybe you've never been in therapy, you don't think you need therapy. Therapy's stupid. It's for losers. Whatever. Like best thing that somebody could do, and no, this is not fucking medical advice, but yes, I swear to God, this is what you should do instantly, is go into fucking therapy and start talking out what's happening. Start talking it out. And
that is what that's the fucking training. That's what slowly creates this observing ego ability.
Yeah. I suppose.
And having the therapist there feel your emotions, validate them, feel them with you, but still be able to just like hold space to talk about it and reflect about it and sit with it and tolerate it.
Well, I think that is maybe where, I can't believe where we've ended up is getting a divorce.
Go to fucking therapy.
Go to therapy. Go to therapy. And somehow, miraculously, you need to find a competent therapist. Like, not somebody who's going to just bestow their own fucking insecurities and lack of capacity.
Totally. There's
like,
a lot of incompetent therapists out there. I'll think of all the various episodes we've done of this, and you and I are both therapists. This is the first time we've ever recommended therapy.
I know, dude. I know. It's so that says something about the significance of what we're talking about in what happens to one to one's sense of self in this divorce process. I think so, man.
Totally.
Well,
all right, dude. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, let's wrap it up, buddy. Okay.
All right.
Till next time.